Hi, my friends. Dr. Myrelis here, Dr. Mimi. In one more week of this amazing show, Happy Brain, Happy Life, where I want to be able to teach you and share with you basic, simple neuroscience for your brain health. Yes, so you're able to achieve just a happier you while you understand how your brain actually works. Now, I can assure you this is not going to be a neuroanatomy class. However, you will learn essentials of your anatomy and physiology so it makes sense to us how our brain works. Don't you find it interesting that we go to our doctors, we check our health in so many areas, we go ahead and check our hearts, we check our lungs, we check our physical body, our muscles, we do all certain things to make sure that our body is working properly. However, how many times have you even asked, what makes my brain healthy? Why is my brain important? Did you know your brain is the key element to all of the other functions of your body? Nothing else would work without you having a brain that's working. And actually, in many cases, we will misfunction or not function as well when parts of our brain are being impacted. Our brain can be impacted not only by our environment, but the things that we are doing it to keep it healthy. So our goal here in Happy Brain, Happy Life is that you're able to gain simple, easy, everyday understanding of how your brain works so that you are able to accomplish just that. A happy brain will give you a happy life. Now, today, the goal of this show is to talk about, how does the brain work? Now, your brain is your main mechanism for your body, right? Let's think of it as a computer. You probably heard this metaphor before. What we put into and the programming that we put into that computer, it's what actually the output that we are going to receive. However, what input gets into our brain? So to understand that, I want to talk to you a little bit about the anatomy. I promise it'll be simple anatomy for you to understand why the brain is so important in understanding how we think, feel, and act. Isn't it interesting that we're always looking to improve ourselves in our health, but the pieces that impact how we think, feel, and act, we don't pay attention to? Does that make any sense? Sometimes it doesn't, but that is why we are here for you, so that you're able to understand some of those pieces. And I love to be visual. It helps me personally. I'm that kind of a learner. I'm a very visual learner. And so I will be sharing with you throughout every show different options of how you're able to see all of this neuroanatomy come to life. Um, Now, if we are going to understand how the brain works, we need to understand how it is developed. So when we are in the womb, right? Yes, I'm going to take you all the way back to when you were in the womb. It's not that you're going to remember that. However, it is a very important critical place because the human brain, when it reaches maturity, and it really reaches maturity all the way up to like 25, 28 years old. So you have, if you have a couple of teenagers, don't worry, their brains are not well developed yet. We still have a long way to go. That's why you see all that you see during the teenage years. But brain is developing from the womb, and all of this billions of neurons are already there when you are born, right? We don't create new neurons, we actually connect the ones that we already have. So one thing that happens when we're developing in the womb is that our brain develops from the inside out. So the inner structures of the brain develop first. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about that in a couple of minutes. But so you're able to see, and I believe in the first episode, I already showed you how we have, two sides. We have a left hemisphere and a right hemisphere with a fissure in the center, and how these two connect through an area called the corpus callosum. Now, on top of that, and I love my model here because I told you I'm very visual, so it just helps me kind of visualize. So if we were to split our both hemispheres in half, right, we have the inner structures, and it is a bunch of inner structures that we won't be able, right, to express here. However, the center here, which is the hippocampus, right over the corpus callosum, which is the area where our two hemispheres are able to connect. This is the area where our emotions and our most innate activities develop. So, for example, how we're able to feel, how we're able to perceive fear, right? How we're able to have long-term memories. It is all within the hippocampal areas. Now, if you remember that I just told you that our brain is developed from the inside out, that means that those areas of memories, right, and emotions were developed before our cortex was developed. And why is that important? Because you need to understand that our emotions get in the way of our thoughts. Have you ever heard that? If you have heard, great thinkers ever, including my coach, Paul Martinelli, is always talking about that. How hard is it to think? Well, it is hard because we have to overcome the hippocampal area and move towards our cortex. So the cortex is the last piece, that is the last zone, right, to be developed within our body in terms of the brain. And so it is the area that is going to need the most creation of connections, right? We have different kinds of neurons. Out of those billions, some will work for example, motor movement and motor activity, even the ability for me to blink or move my mouth to speak or move my tongue to produce words, right? All of that is motor movement. Now, that is a specific type of neuron that helps me with motor activity. But we have neurons that are specific for thought, right? Are the ones that move information enough to produce thought. There are other neurons that are just the messenger. They're the little gossipers that just pass the information from one zone of the body to another. And why is this important? Because all of that has been programmed since you are in the womb. Yes, everything that we think, everything that has been aligned in our subconscious, right, has been part of a thought or an experience, right, an emotional experience, when we didn't even know that it was being an emotional experience. It's been saved in that hippocampal area. And that is why it's so important to understand, wow, I really have to learn how to go past the hippocampus and make sure that I get my thoughts active, right? That's why we're always saying we have to work on thinking. And there are many strategies for us to be able to work on thinking. So our brain, that hippocampus, and obviously there are many other structures, but the hippocampus and the inside structures are all of that innate work, right? The ability for us to breathe and our heart to beat is right on the medulla, so it's right before our spinal cord, and our whole central nervous system is combined of the brain and our spinal cord. That means all the information that our neurons are gathering are from all of our environment. And so if we are able to consciously interpret and receive that information, then we're able to surpass the hippocampus and then bring the event or the activity or anything that we're doing to our conscious brain, right? To the conscious parts of your brain, which are the outer cortex. So that cortex is actually structured in a couple of ways, but I'm going to show you the main four lobes that we have, which one is right. I'm going to put my hand right here so you can see it, is the frontal lobe. And our frontal lobe is like touching right here in the forehead, right? The frontal lobe is the coordinator. So we always want a coordinator for that wedding, right? We always want somebody that'll think of the music, the seats, the cake, the food, right? We need to have the one person that has all of that put into place and understanding what's going to be going on. That is our frontal lobe. Now we have the parietal lobe, which is right here. When you see these two colors, don't worry, it is not those two colors in real life, of course, it's gray matter. But those are the areas where our motor and premotor areas, where our motor activity is initiated and propelled. This is why, look at this example. This is why I tell people, if you want to think, walk. Because when we walk, we make our cortex active. We obligate the cortex to be active. And what that means is that our information is able to go to that frontal cortex to think better, to process information better. So whenever you want to think, walk. Make sure you provoke some kind of motor movement, but we will talk way more about what activities and what things we are able to do to activate our brains in the next episodes. Now, on the back part of our brain, we have what is called the occipital lobe right behind us, so right here on the back. And the occipital lobe is actually mainly responsible for our vision. So our ability to perceive thought, to perceive information through our eyes and get the information interpreted on all the way to the back of our head. So can you imagine if our brain is really created as a network, that our eyes are in the front of our head, but the piece that interprets that information is all the way in the back. So can you imagine how those structures are intertwined in a way that they really have to work together to experience the perception of what you saw and give it meaning. This is why as we develop, our brain is receiving visual information and it's making assumptions. We have been making assumptions and conclusions out of everything that we are able to see through our eyes and interpret it through our occipital lobe. Isn't that interesting? Now, the last lobe is actually a left and a right lobe because it's our temporal lobe. So it's this lobe right here on the sides, right here, and on the other side, right, on the right. And those temporal lobes work a lot with our capability, obviously, to hear, right? So it's very close to our ears. So yes, it does work with hearing. It works with our language, how we process and manifest language. But in addition, it also works with what we call working memory. Now, working memory is very important because it's our ability to think and act in the moment with information that we just received, right? So it's our ability to retain that information, not even think about it, but process it and use it immediately. So processing, obviously, our left side of the brain is more analytical, it's more organized. This is where our science, our literature, our language, right, is oriented. And then on our right side of the brain, we have more of the creative, we call it the creative side, right? The holistic side, because it's more of the spatial information, the ability to perceive and see beauty and colors and actions and the ability to see the whole picture instead of the details that the left side sees. Now, if you see, we have been educated from a left perspective because academic programs, if you would take a look at them right now, they are all based on what? On a left hemisphere. We have to study science, we have to study math, we have to study language arts, right? Social studies. All of those activities are based on left hemisphere, where those of us who love music, dance, art, creativity, action are more right hemisphere oriented. So if you are, we function in a contralateral way. That means that our left brain, right, left hemisphere is controlling the right side of our bodies, and the right hemisphere is controlling the left side of our bodies. So think about it. If you are right-handed, and most people are in terms of statistics, then most people would be stronger. That's what theory used to say, on their left hemisphere. But nowadays, we have found that it was more of a program activity throughout academic learning. It was what people were taught. It was at a point where even people would be tried to be left-handed, and they were changed to be right-handed because that was the proper way of doing it. And so we have been programmed to use academically the left hemisphere rather than, exploring our potential with both hemisphere. And I think that as COVID came and people started exploring their likes and their tastes into things, they discovered that they had so many talents in that right hemisphere that they started living a lot of their purpose, because they started seeing how much potential was on that right side of the brain. So our brain has been structured to help us coordinate all of the activities. Actually, there is one more structure right at the bottom, and this is called our cerebellum. And the cerebellum is responsible for our ability to coordinate motion. That is one of the ones that gets most impacted when we do a lot of alcohol, because it immediately is able to absorb alcohol in that section, and then does not allow us to coordinate our motor action properly. So our brain is an amazing machine that's going to perceive all of your environment, is going to take it in. And even if you have not decided this, it is going to program it somewhere. As you are able to learn about brain health, you are capable of understanding this. This is why these are the three factors that are most important of this physiology. One is going to be our anatomy, right? How we are built, how this structure is already built in such a magnificent way. Number two is going to be our chemistry. And I know that through the camera, probably you're not able to see all the little details, but we have, blood vessels, and we have all kinds of connections, meninges, areas where our chemistry flows through our brain to be able to interact diverse chemicals. Last episode, on episode 1, I talked about homeostasis and creating an equilibrium among cells. And our brain is going to look to stimulate areas that are going to either provoke great emotions or provoke very low emotions, provokes thought or provoke very negative thought. So these factors are key for us to understand how the brain works. So you have your anatomy, you have your chemistry, but third and not least important is our physics, the energy that we use and consume within our brain to be able to produce thoughts and feelings, which result in actions, right? So understanding how these three basic physiology functions within our anatomy are just going to guide us to to be more effective? Don't you think, now that I understand, now that I know, wow, there's parts of my brain that actually work together and have been planned there since I was in the womb? Yes. Does that make sense to you? Does that make sense that your whole environment, since you were in the womb, started creating connections? Your neurons actually have been in constant creation of connections and development. Now, I have a good news for you. And this is that even though you've had whatever, multiply it by the amount of years that you have, I don't know if you're in your 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, or 60s or more, the good thing is that the brain is always willing to listen. The brain is always willing to learn. And because it is willing to learn, if you provide it new experiences, new options, new opportunities, the brain is able to change towards the better goal and living your full potential. So I am looking already forward to sharing with you more in depth of how the brain works and how you're going to be able to make changes in your life. Very simple changes that you can apply immediately. But I hope that today is one that helps you create consciousness, consciousness of how my brain is already structured, how it's there. Wow, there's a lot that I can do because my chemistry and my physics depend on me. They depend on what I'm doing to this body, what I'm doing to my brain, what decisions am I making as to how to keep my brain healthy. And this show, Happy Brain, Happy Life, our goal is to bring you that information. Our goal is to connect you to the right tools, to simple tools for you to understand that it does not take, extreme science for you to be able to make changes today. So I am going to challenge you as we close this show today is to take a deep thought about what are you taking with you today about brain learning from the brain. And number two, think about what experiences have you gone through in life from your birth, those that you're able to remember. Some people are able to actually go really back in their lives and seeing, I didn't even think that could have been programmed if it wasn't, because I'm creating a level of consciousness about how my brain was programmed to believe this or that, or how to do things. We are constantly putting information into our brain, and it was done since we were in the womb, because that is how our brain develops. So believe me, when we tell you your brain does not have to be the brain that you have today. The way that you think, the way that you feel, even the way that you act can be transformed as you start learning how to develop and potentially grow the capabilities that you have in your brain by learning simple things every single day. So I encourage you, be aware. Be aware this week, be conscious. For me, it is a pleasure to share with you every week a little bit more. I want you to be aware and connect with yourself, connect with how you, I know we cannot see ourselves in, right? But we're going to be talking about research. How does research talk about how can we find more about the brain? What is telling us now that we actually have known for quite a few years, but it is now that is coming to light, and it is now that we're sharing new potential, new opportunities. This is your time. This is your time to develop a happy brain, a happy life. You're able to follow me on Facebook if you don't have me yet. Dr. Myrelis Aponte or Dr. Myrelis on Instagram. I will be super happy to connect with you and share with this beautiful community just how much you're able to move forward. If you have questions, I would love to hear them. I would want to see, what do you want to learn about the brain? I want to bring that here for you. I want to bring it to this space that we have every week as we grow. I promise I'll take it slow. I promise it won't all be just pure science, but I needed to give you these hints of neuroanatomy so you're able to connect with where you are and become more conscious about your new happy brain with a happy life. So see you next week, and I look forward to learning more.